We see Germany really today as a hub for Israeli companies who want to open the European market. But I think at the end, if you look at a startup and what it needs money and it needs a market. It's not enough to build strong firewalls and to protect your IT. You need to look on it as something that needs maintenance and training and people to be aware of the risks that are out there. The geopolitics of today are teaching us that you cannot take anything for sure. What makes Israel such an innovative country and what makes the Israelis so unique in the way they think out of the box and come with these solutions to the world?
Krieg in der Ukraine, Krieg im Nahen Osten und autoritäre Staaten überall auf der Welt bekommen immer mehr an Einfluss und Einfluss. Deutschland, Europa, mittendrin. Und genau hier setzen wir an. Wir haben heute ein Interview mit Argav Asov. Argav Asov ist Wirtschaftskonsul in Deutschland für Israel und er betreut die Partnerschaften zwischen Israel und Deutschland. Wir schauen uns heute an, wie die Kooperationen gewachsen sind. Wir schauen uns an, wie die Verteidigungszusammenarbeit aussieht. Und wir schauen uns an, welche Folgen es für Deutschland hat und welche Vorteile. Viel Spaß und genießt es.
Hello, welcome to this interview of European relations. Thank you so much for taking the time today. If you briefly can introduce yourself and maybe tell our viewers what's your role at the Israeli consulate? What exactly do you do? What's your job responsibilities? What does that entail?
Okay. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Asaf Argov. I'm the Israeli Economic Consul to South Germany. I'm working under the premises of the Israeli General Consulate. But in Israel, I belong to a different office than the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It's quite a different system than how most countries manage their foreign trade policies. I'm actually belonging to the Ministry of Economy and Industry. Mm-hmm. And to become in this position, I went through a cadet course. I was selected to join the team, and we had 4 months of training. And then for me, it was almost 3 years of on-the-job learning and experiencing the role of becoming an economic attaché by leading projects all over the world, working with current economic attachés and learning from them on how they manage the business and what they're doing. I was in the role of chief of staff, so I was also close to our administration and management and seeing all the strategic decisions and supporting on a more higher level. And then last year I was very happy to receive this first assignment to come to Munich, and I joined the office here. Our role, part of an organization that is named Trade IL, is to promote Israeli trade. Mm-hmm. And also bring more investments to Israel. This is the main focus for myself and my team. And also support Israeli companies in regulatory issues, removing trade barriers that they're facing when they're trying to operate or penetrate the German market. So we do it on a one-on-one basis. We have a system where companies can approach us and ask for our support. Mm-hmm. And then we schedule a meeting with them and we learn their technology and the solution, and we see how and where does it fit the German market. Sometimes we comment on it, we share some of our knowledge and advice, and then we look for potential partners, customers here to try and interest them with the solution. This is our daily work, and we do it yearly, every day, 365 days a week. And on top of that, we also initiate many activities where we bring delegations from Israel to Germany. We work around big trade shows, and we also bring delegations from Germany to Israel, try to focus on specific topics every time, and do the matchmaking between what Israel has to offer to what Germany is looking for, and try to generate as much as new business as we can.
All right. So going back maybe to your own personal career, you've mentioned that previously that you've been here in Germany for 7 months now, mm-hmm. And had this very rigorous training previously in your home country. Yeah. How does that selection process work, and like what does someone study to get into that field specifically, and then how does the choice work that you end up out of all places in the Federal Republic of Germany?
Yeah. I wouldn't say there's a specific recipe. It really varies. I mean, the limit in order to apply for the cadet course is in Israel only that you have a bachelor degree. But of course, as much as you have further than that experience, and if you're focusing more in economics and in international affairs, this gives you an advantage. Personally, I studied what is called PPE, so it's Political Science, Philosophy, and Economy at the Hebrew University. And then I continued to do my master's at Business Administration and classic MBA in Israel, but this was already after I was approved to the program. And I think to come to Germany, first of all, we're not pushed to go to any state. So this also is quite unique for our specific course and training. Every year there are tenders opening for countries where a position is now available, and I can choose if I want to apply for a tender or not. And I was quite focused on Munich because in Germany we have two offices. We have an office in Berlin, we have an office in Munich, and I knew that there is a chance to receive Munich on a first position, even though it's not very common. But also giving my experience where I was chief of staff and I had like a very broad overview and I stayed 1 year longer in the administration, then the stars were aligning in a way that allowed me to come to Munich. For me, it was also important on a personal level, having my background and my family's story. Both of my grandparents are survivors of the Holocaust and they came to Israel. So it's kind of a personal closure also for me to be here today.
That's nice. So like it was an active choice to then ultimately come to Germany, and was the choice more of an assignment at the end of the day? How big can we think of that selection of countries maybe that you made or that your employees had?
We have today 41 assignments around the world. And every year there are about 5 to 10 positions that open, because this position is usually a 4 years position. So you can decide if you're focusing only on a specific country to wait until this tender opens and go for it. But nothing is promised. And if there's someone else competing with you on this position, maybe you're not going to get it. So it's always good to have a plan B and be quite flexible with your choice. But for me, the first position I wanted was Munich, and I'm very happy that I received it. It also works pretty well with my family. I moved here with my wife and my child and our dog. And my wife works for an Israeli company, which is international. It's called SodaStream. I'm assuming you know it. They're quite famous here in Germany. And they also offered her to shift from an Israeli contract to a German contract. So now she's employed here, still working for the global unit. And in this sense, it also worked out pretty well for us. So.
All right.
Yeah.
So the type of work you do at the consulate is very much, would you say your primary point of contact is private companies, Israeli companies that come to you? Are you reaching out to them? Or is that more of a governmental initiative that is taken for that corporation?
So we are very active and proactive, approaching German companies, approaching Israeli companies when we see that there is a match and a potential business case. But also we are reactive, receiving applications from Israeli companies, but also inquiries from German companies. So I wouldn't say that there is a specific way. We try to be to provide the best service to companies that approach us. But also we always are looking for the next opportunity and see where can we bring more value to Israeli companies. So it really goes both ways in this sense.
And it is somewhat also of a legislative process where the companies cannot navigate the German system themselves, or what is the specific type of then help or support that you offer them specifically? Let's say a German company wants to do business in Israel or vice versa.
Yeah. So our profession is really on matching between a solution to a need. So if there's a company with a great solution, then we can identify where there is a need in the German market for this solution and do the matchmaking. When a company has a struggle with more bureaucracy in Germany, if it's the regulation and they don't fit the standards or anything like this, then we can always advise who they should consult with or what they can do in order to fit the standard and regulation. But this is not per se our profession. Yeah. Sometimes there are specific barriers where we can approach, and we are approaching the legislators or different regulatory entities in Germany to see why a process is stuck. So it could be an Israeli company trying to import goods to Israel, but for some reason they're blocked, or vice versa. They send them here, but something is blocking their goods from arriving. So in these cases, usually we interfere and try to solve the situation. But when there is a more, let's say, legal or regulatory issue, we always prefer to consult with the professions, because ourselves we're focusing more on the business part.
And obviously you've been doing this quite like recently, or are new in this field yourself, or your career is quite young still.
Yeah.
But focusing on the history, maybe, right, the special relationship between Germany and Israel. Could you say a bit about how you see this developed or having developed, and now where do we stand as of the current day, specifically obviously after World War II, the atrocities that happened, especially the Shoah, and then given in the 50s after the Luxembourg Agreement, how do you see that relationship between the two countries on the economic side specifically?
I think the development is a very interesting one, considering the history and the background that Germany and Israel share. After the Shoah and when the government changed, there was a very strong support by the German government to Israelis, to survivors of the Holocaust. My grandmother until today is receiving money from the German government as a Holocaust survivor, and really a big will to support this country, the state of Israel, and contribute to its economy. Only last year we mentioned and celebrated 60 years of diplomacy relations between Israel and Germany. So this is one of the first countries to establish also diplomacy relations with Israel, and of course voted for us for this establishment of the state of Israel, and throughout history really had our back in the European Union and also on a global scale. But if I'm focusing more on the economies, so I think the shift is very interesting from bringing the German industry to support building Israel. If it's the big corporates like Siemens and Bosch who are still now contributing to build the big infrastructure projects in Israel, like the metro project in Tel Aviv, but also, bringing all the German knowledge, the German industrial knowledge to Israel to build our country. And it shifted over probably the last 2 decades into big German corporates coming to Israel, not to build the country, but to take innovation out of the country and bring it to Germany. So if you see today the amount of multinational German corporates who have a presence in Israel, scout offices looking for technology, especially in the automotive. Almost all of the big OEMs have an office in Germany, but also Deutsche Bank and now Bosch and Siemens have their own innovation kind of scouts in Germany, in Israel. And I think now you see that the relation is going more than supplying Israel with the industrial needs, that it was in a necessity for building the infrastructure of the country and building our economy. Also now to taking from Israel the innovation and bringing it back to Germany, so the industry here can also scale and become more up to date and compete with the global market.
It's an interesting dynamic that this initial support of Germany, now vice versa, that we can learn a lot from Israel. What would you say Israel has done differently than Germany over these last few decades? Why is it now that German companies are going there and trying to figure out what is done right economically?
I think it's very hard to put the finger exactly what makes Israel such an innovative country and what makes the Israelis so unique in the way they think out of the box and come with these solutions to the world. For sure, it's also the circumstances and the neighborhood that we're living in, that sometimes we know that we have no choice other than finding a solution to our problems. And this is kind of a mentality that Israelis live with, not just with a fear to our lives and looking for the defense solutions that we need to exist and we see now that are saving our lives, but really a mentality that goes to almost every aspect of your life, that you see if you have an idea, you will go all the way with it and sacrifice a lot in order to accomplish and to make it successful. And I think this is also a bit been built by the multiculturalism that established Israel when after the country was basically established and built. There was people were coming from all over Europe, North Africa, North America, and this multiculturalism really created this mix of minds and ideas into something that boomed in the past 2 decades with all the big, technology and innovation that is now our main catalysator for our economy.
And do you see in your work that it is really the learnings that Germany is taking from Israel, are they mainly then on a cultural, personal level, or also on a very dry organizational level that for some reason this key to innovation is how companies, businesses are structured themselves? When we compare the bureaucracy, the famous German bureaucracy, are there equivalents found in Israel, or would you say it's more efficient? Is that one of the reasons?
I think it's a combination. I mean, if I'm looking here in Munich, from my experience at what TUM is doing in Unternehmertum, and you speak with founders of startups there, so you see that it's also a matter of mindset, and they're willing to do what it takes in order to make your company succeed. If it's working around the clock, 7 days a week, and if it's really putting all your efforts into your company and pushing aside sometimes your personal life and your personal needs. But also it is this ecosystem that has to be very strong and supportive to allow you to grow and to drive ideas from your companions and from the big corporates who are in the need of the technology but cannot develop them themselves. So it's both a structural kind of purpose, but also a personal mentality that brings it together. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And can you speak to specific, concrete, maybe just on a more legislative, governmental level, agreements that have helped in this regard in the last couple of years, specifically?
Between Israel and Germany, we have several agreements who are pushing the relations in specific themes. So we have an energy bilateral agreement, which hosts mutual dialogues over the year to contribute the research and development in the field of energy and storage solutions and renewables, and also business-to-business gatherings or meetings to matchmake between solutions or needs from the Israeli market to solutions and needs from the German market. And especially when you see the need for energy solutions and energy independency, both in Germany and in Israel, which is an isolated country, I feel like this agreement is very important in contributing a lot to exchanges. Last year, we were also, there was the announcement of the Cyberdome project, which is the collaboration between Germany and Israel to build the cyber defense strategy for Germany, which is kind of an idea that was designed in Israel from our experience throughout all the wars and all the different hacker attacks and terror attacks that we experienced over the past years, to look at the cyber defense as something more holistic and not something very specific. So it's not enough to build strong firewalls and to protect your IT, but you need to look on it as something that needs maintenance and training and people to be aware of the risks that are out there, and look at the future threats coming from the AI, coming from drones, and see how can you also tackle these threats. So this is another big project that now you see a lot of exchanges between Germany and Israel, trying to establish these abilities to protect Germany and also to improve Israel's defense system and cyber system. And I think in the future we will see more and more of these initiatives in the technologies that are now more emerging or more on the interest of the ecosystem. Could be more deep tech technologies that are now more in the focus, quantum solutions, where Israel also has a lot to offer, but also now in Germany we see more and more money invested in quantum and interest in quantum solutions. So, yeah.
When we talk about the Cyber Dome specifically, is that something, when we talk about the application at the end of the day, that's more the government itself can be applied to that, or also something that can be broken down on a individual company level, that a company itself and private industry can profit from that or utilize it in its business? So
we're speaking about an idea that the government is leading to establish a concept that is a multi-layer defense system, not focusing only on protecting IT or protecting the critical infrastructure, but also seeing a threat as something, the threats today as something more holistic, and building the defense system in a way that can protect you from all these different verticals. But this is also something that could be drilled down to a company. So for example, if a big corporate sees that its vulnerability is the same way like the government is seeing, where it could be attacked by hackers, but it could also be attacked by drones, and also the people can be a vulnerability if their hardware is penetrated by some hacker. So it is a concept that could also be drilled down to a smaller level. And here there's a lot of technology needed, which comes from the private sector mainly. It's not something that the government is able to develop by itself. It will for sure rely on existing technologies from the private market in order to build these defense systems.
Given the new threats that, I mean, of course, with the war in Ukraine and other theaters across the globe that Germany is in now, I'm thinking of specific initiatives like Arrow 3, for example. What do you see your role, or the role of then the facilitator kind of specifically? What role do you play?
I think for these big defense systems like Arrow 3 or Eurotrophy, where there's the big and very successful primes from Israel who came up with the technology and built the IP and tested it in our reality and made sure that it works and it actually saves life. Mostly they are already approached by the potential clients who see the technology, who want it themselves. So in these big projects, I'm less playing an important role because the connection is quite straightforward. We know what we want, we know that you have it. The only problem is how to bring it over, because sometimes the IP consists of very sensitive data or information that Israel does not want to share or wants to share with some restrictions. And then usually the struggle is how to transfer the IT, manufacture or build it here in Germany with no side being compromised or to any further risks. But if you look at these massive projects, how Arrow 3 came here, or Eurotrophy, or any of the big defense systems that now are being implemented in Germany, these are also relevant processes to learn from when you want to bring in the smaller solutions, like a very good drone that is developed now in Israel and could be of need here in Germany. And see how can you build these joint ventures in Germany by transferring the IP from Israel manufacturing here, and then selling it to the Bundeswehr or to the Ukraine, wherever there's a need. I think this is where we can play a stronger role, and we're trying to play a stronger role. Also to educate the Israeli companies that this is how it should be done. Yeah.
And if we again look at the defense aspect, artificial intelligence is playing an increasingly a vital role, especially Israeli companies again are at the forefront of that. How do you see, like you just talked about, the transfer of technology? Would that then be an Israeli company setting up its premises, its businesses in Germany, so the IP transfer and so on would be secure? Or where is the overlap then with German authorities or German companies in that it is efficient and the working relationship can work, but then again, it is not openly shared, but to an extent that the relationship can work, or like the individual transfer of the technology then, let's say, in support of Ukraine can actually be meaningful?
Yes, I think it really depends, first of all, if it's a hardware or software company or a combination. When you're pure software, sometimes you don't need to open a German entity. You can just sell your product from distance. But what we're seeing now also with the willingness of Germany and Europe to become more independent and have their own cloud and own data centers, sometimes also there will be a need to bring the IP from Israel to Germany if you want to sell it, especially if it's for sensitive purposes or for defense matters. When you are a hardware company, if you're looking to sell in a very big scale, sometimes you're not even able to manufacture this amount of need in Israel, and then for sure you will need to look for manufacturer partners. But also, if you are aiming to sell for, let's say, the big primes or the defense industry, sometimes there could also be a need to manufacture here to make sure that if there is a dependency on your technology, you can't control it, and one day say, I'm stopping to produce. And this is, so here for sure for the defense, there is a bigger need to open a local joint venture or open a local GmbH if you want to operate and sell your product here.
And that maybe to that question, how do you would see companies balance establishing maybe a joint venture or venture themselves in Germany and protecting their own interests versus German companies then coming to Israel, and like the balance of either we adopt technologies from Israel or we take companies here and invite them to participate in the German market? Is that something that is tricky, or is it more tricky than it sounds in theory?
It's always tricky. Every agreement like this is almost like a wedding, because you need to find the right partner where you can build something together, and this will last now for years. You don't know how long. So it's really a matter of having trust and openness and good conversations and to feel that you have someone that you can rely on. And if it's not reaching this level of communication and relations, then it's not going to succeed, because there will always be one side who says, no, I have a different interest than the other one. But if the companies are managing to build this level of trust and agreement among themselves, then the potential of success is very high.
And your afterwards, after the deal is facilitated, the economic relationship is established, is there some form of oversight, some form of seeing where this progresses, or are those companies then mostly like left to their own devices?
From our end, since we are trying to support as many companies as we can, we always focus on the initial connection. If we see that this is a project of larger scale, then we also try to be there in follow-up meetings and to encourage both sides or both parties to continue the discussion. But most of the cases, we only focus on creating the initial connection, and then let them lead it from there. Because we're not going to be there throughout the entire time, and we don't want to be there. We just want to connect between a need and a solution, and let then the business do itself. So,
would you say that your work is now more relevant than it has been over the last couple of years or decades? Do you see a growth basically in that cooperation, or would you say it stayed level? Since you mentioned before that your team has grown, you yourself have been stationed here now. How should we assess that?
So we always look at the bilateral trade. I'm sorry. We always look at the bilateral trade between Israel and Germany as our main parameter to see is this figure growing over the years or stabilizing? And luckily for us, it is growing. It stands today on over $9 billion. And we definitely see a growth over the years. But for sure, some of it is happening by itself. For example, my team and I are leading a delegation focusing on industrial solutions like robotics, CNC, and we approached several companies in the region. And then one of them told us that they like to do their scouting and themselves, and that they are already in exchanges with 2 Israeli companies, but they know how to do it. And of course, today when you have AI, it's very easy to look for solutions, to look for if there's a technology that matches what you need. And this is exactly where we need to renovate a little our service and see in which points we play a more crucial role. And I think for my team and what we're trying to do is focus more on network and events where we can bring many Israeli companies to meet with many German partners. And because at the end, there's no actual replace for this live one-on-one interaction, even if it's by Zoom or by mailing. Until you meet someone face to face and you communicate, there's no actual trust being built. And for us now, what we did in the past months and quite successfully is to try and do as much as these networking events and B2B matchmaking as possible. And I think it does lead to a success, but it's still very early to see, because the cycle of closing a deal in Germany could vary from 2 weeks if it's an incredible match and a software that fits exactly your need and you say, okay, I want it, to years. I mean, really depends on how long and the relationship between 2 parties is going. So we will see in time. But I'm positive that for us, we're still playing a very crucial role. And we also see it by the amount of requests that we're receiving, both from the Israeli companies and the German ones.
If you talk about this match, is that sometimes a difficulty with different standards as well? Obviously German, Israeli standards or European standards and interfering on regulation. If we go back to the defense topic, for example, what we've seen in NATO itself, we have so many different mechanisms that even different armed forces are unable to fully integrate their systems. Do you see then an attempt to match or synchronize those systems, or no matter what industry we might be talking about? Or is that also one of the hurdles next to the regulation and the paperwork itself?
I think today, especially in the defense, it's more of a hurdle because at the end, there is a strong need for technology and there's no way of getting it because the solution comes from a quite small, unknown, distant company, and the connection just is not possible because most of the technology now that goes to the defense industry is going through the big primes, and they are currently very busy and they have an overload of solutions and developments that they are requested to do in the following years. So there is this bottleneck that is really limiting now more technology to come into the market and reach its end user. But I don't think this situation will last long. I think more organizations in Germany and more initiatives will be available and open to work with the defense industry more, and then the smaller solutions or the edge technologies that are in Israel or in any other country could come to the market through these initiatives and these companies, but it's still in a phase of establishment now. For other sectors, I think every sector has its different characteristics and uniqueness, and some are more affected by regulation, for example, cyber, but this could be in a more positive way or a negative way. So, because the regulations in cyber are imposed on corporates, and then they need to build their cyber resilience in order to match the regulation, and therefore they need solutions, which could come from Israel as well. So this creates also an opportunity for Israeli companies to come to Germany, alongside all the bureaucracy that they need to face in order to work here and to sell to the market. So bureaucracy can go in both ways, and it really depends on the sector where it creates more opportunities or where it limits the market from being accessed. Yeah.
And so also the famous German Datenschutz probably is a headache occasionally. Would you say that there's a similar focus in Israel on such broad protection mechanisms, or is Germany really, is it hindering its innovation partially as one of the pillars of regulation?
I think there's a significant gap between Israel and Germany in this sense. You can look in one sector that we didn't speak much about, like the life science or medtech. In Israel, we have an open data policy. Each of the citizens is belonging to a specific insurer who collects all of its data and can then offer this data to be used in order to develop new solutions to the market. We have two hospitals who are very innovative and taking a lot of the patient's data. Of course, they keep it in a way that no one can know who exactly is the patient and what exactly is the disease that he's suffering from, but offering it to technological companies to develop more solutions for the healthcare segment, which are now also being spread all over the world. And this is something that Germany is far from being at the point of sharing patients' data with technological companies. So you do see a very big gap, but I think there is more and more an understanding here in Germany that this needs to be solved somehow. Yeah. So maybe in healthcare it's harder to solve or match what Israel is doing, but in other segments like AI or cyber, there are more solutions that Germany can now implement in order to open more the market for innovation.
You mentioned that startups have a hard time in breaking into this market, if it's the defense primes or even in medical biotechnology and so on. Do you see them having the ability to circumvent that bottleneck, or does that bottleneck basically apply to everyone without exception?
Always there are exceptions, but I think at the end, if you look at a startup and what it needs money and it needs a market. And when you look at how long will it take a startup to get money and a client in Germany, other than the US, most of the startups will focus firstly on the US, because this is a safer bet for them. They can get more money there more easily, and they can get more clients there more easily. But then again, most of the startups and companies understand that they cannot give up Europe as a market, because they want to be here as well. And it's only a matter of how much resources are you willing to invest in order to open Germany and Europe as a market. This could also mean taking some local rep who speaks the language and can build better trust with the local companies than you can back from Israel. And also invest in learning the bureaucracy and seeing all the paperwork and all the process you need to go through in order to operate here or open your own operation office here. But when a company has a will to do so and has the money to invest, then there's still a big market and great opportunities, and we see more and more companies doing it today than before.
And are there government subsidies, initiatives, programs from the Israeli government for such young startups, or even maybe more established firms if they want to pivot in a different direction, adapt to the times? How does the government support them, not only in your line of work specifically, but then also from funding perspectives? Is that mostly private, or do we also see government funds being directed towards specific areas?
The private sector is the strongest one in investments in Israel, and both from internal money, but also from money coming outside, from the US, from Europe. But the government has several initiatives also to support the ecosystem and the startups. There we have the Israeli Innovation Authority, who hands out big grants for startups every year to promote their R&D and also scaling process for different verticals, different sectors. And also in our office in the Ministry of Economy, we offer 2 programs today. One that is funding pilots for companies abroad. So if a company has a pilot in Germany and they need support in funding it, because usually these pilots are very expensive, then they can apply and get a grant from us, from the government. And also we are funding some of the marketing expenses for companies who need to travel abroad to present a solution, to participate in different roadshows or exhibitions that we are organizing. So these are also 2 programs of support that we offer companies today.
You've already mentioned a few success stories. BioNTech, also there's the Israeli connection, Aero 3, and so on. What do you see, something that's maybe underlooked, not really focused on right now? What could be one of those next success stories, if it's a specific company that you're currently working with, if you're able to disclose that, or a specific area where you see a need maybe for the focus to be intensified?
Yeah. So I can't really disclose any company where I'm betting on another success. But I can say that, of course, in the defense and cyber, I anticipate many success stories in the following weeks, months, and years, because of the need and how both countries are quite complementary to each other. In the defense, the ability to manufacture and have the strong industry background from Germany alongside the technology coming from Israel. And in cyber, the need and the solution, which matches very well. But I would also say that quantum, as I mentioned before, is an area which is now maybe a little overlooked or looks quite science fictional for some Germans, but I think many corporates and also investors are understanding that it's not something like science fictional anymore, and it's really heading in this direction. And considering what I know Israel has to offer, and the initial exchanges between Israeli companies and German companies, I also anticipate quite big success stories in this field as well.
All right, and something we haven't talked about since European relations has this European focus. What do you see the role of the EU in this, given its regulatory background? Has it been beneficial to this bilateral relationship with Germany? Or do you see then an expansion through Germany as a partner helping you facilitate more contacts or just established businesses within the EU? Or are those more individual relationships with France, Belgium, or the Netherlands, or so on? Or is there a connection through the German market?
So I think the EU is mainly the player who set the rules for Israeli companies who want to operate in Germany or in other countries, and say, okay, these are the guidelines you need to follow, but then if you want to sell, you need to find a customer, and then this will mainly be done on a more business to business or country to country level. And you see sometimes in other European states where the opinion about Israel is more negative, that less companies are open today to do business with Israeli companies. Other, like in Germany, where we didn't experience almost any negative reactions or saying, and usually people tend more to put the political issue aside and focus on business. So I think the EU is setting the rules, and as I said before, sometimes these rules can contribute to Israeli companies because they create a necessity for European organizations to reach some kind of standard for which they need technology. But in other areas, they also are a barrier. For example, if you look at the AI Act and how it could affect Israeli companies who are using AI as a core solution, and it doesn't fit the regulation that the EU is now setting for AI. So it could be a big barrier for them if they want to offer the solution to the market.
Have you seen a decline in the facilitation of those business relationships, or maybe even a pulling out of existing regulations, company agreements, given the recent developments that we see across the Middle East?
It's not a research that I've conducted, but I think quite easily I can assess that in some European countries, for sure, you can see a decline. And it comes from both ways. It also comes from an Israeli company who says, it's not safe for me to operate now in country X because they can decide to ban my product tomorrow, and then I'm losing all my market. And of course, it also comes from the other side who says, I don't want to work with Israel because of various reasons. So for sure, it affects the business. But again, the situation, the geopolitical situation also contributes other businesses today, like the defense industry and like the cyber industry, who, if you look on the figures from the past years, probably sold more, also in countries who might not have the best relations with Israel these days.
And is that something you prepare for in advance? If we look at the horizon of forecasting or foresight, that is something where you have a certain quota of deals or of items on your agenda, or is it more of an ad hoc development most of the time that you cannot assess now what will be the items you would be working on, let's say, this fall or at the end of the year?
We always work ad hoc according to the requests that we're receiving. So if I'm approached by an Israeli textile company or Israeli cyber company, I need to provide both of them service, and possibly the best service I can. Yeah. But when we build our work plan for next year, so we always look, where do we see the future opportunities and what big events are going to be held in Germany, where we think this is a good place for Israeli companies to come and attend and show their technology. So we always try to anticipate, okay, this, for example, quantum or deep tech, now is the next thing. We need to do more activities in these areas, but also reacting to the market, to the need, and trying to give service ad hoc whenever we are approached. Yeah.
Where do you see, I mean, the relationship between Israel and Germany is obviously quite strong and has been for most of its history after the war. Where do you see points of friction between the German government, which the coalition now obviously and before has been throughout the last few years in power for most of the time? Do you see a worry, the political landscape, that will increasingly have an influence on those developments, or is that something that the stability of Germany is more of a given, that is not too much of a risk factor in your opinion?
I think if you look at the approach and opinion of all the parties in Germany towards Israel, you can safely say that we are quite in a good position. Also in some of the Bundesländers where we had now shift in parliaments, for us, we always say it's like we're choosing between good and good because they're both really strongly on our side. But this relation, and I don't want to get much into politics in this discussion, but of course, there's always issues which are more concerning to the German government, like the Palestinian state and what will be the future of the Israeli-Palestinian relationship. And our government currently, or the one that will be elected in September, always needs to mitigate and find a way to preserve the German support in light of the different opinions that each party could share about the situation.
And how important on a regional level is then the individual state support of the Bundesländer or the individual work that's done on that level between, let's say, Bavaria and Israel itself, or is it always in the shadow of the federal government?
I think for economic purposes, the Bundesländer play a very strong role. If you look at some of the strongest Bundesländers in Germany, like Bavaria, like Baden-Württemberg, NRW, they all tend to have their business development agencies very active or with what's going on in Israel. Some have an office in Israel. Some send delegations to Israel to participate in the different leading trade shows that we have there. And they're always very open to communicate with us to do these matchmaking between their companies and our companies. And so I also see a very important role of their activity to contribute to the business relations. And I think on a more federal level, there are initiatives like the energy agreement or the Cyberdome who can set the rules or the framework where more trade could be conducted. We are now building a 5-point plan of collaboration between Germany and Israel. It was recently announced between my Minister of Economy and Minister Reiche to see how can we focus on the main points where we see potential and a need and bring more business to companies in Germany and Israel within these areas. Because we see Germany really today as a hub for Israeli companies who want to open the European market, and we want them to look at Germany as the first country that they are penetrating before they go to all the other European countries. And for this we need a strong infrastructure here and an appealing offer for them to come, which is what we're trying to build now together.
All right. Maybe looking to the future, how do you assess the conditions? We've already talked about quite a lot, but looking at your counterpart in the economic ministries, is that something that you assess with optimism, or how do you view this in general?
I think there are some multinational projects in the future who can definitely affect in a positive way the relationship and the business exchanges between Germany and Israel. We're looking now at the IMEC initiative to connect Europe with India through the Middle East, where Israel is playing a very crucial role, and see how can we build an infrastructure between Israel and Germany to prepare for this initiative for the day after when it will start becoming reality. And here I think the role of government officials is also very important, because when you see the full picture and you set the targets and the goals that you want to reach in order to accomplish something together, you can really navigate the relationships in a way to be the best successful format. So I think also with my counterparts, looking at these big projects and future opportunities, and then drilling down from there to how will it affect the business relationships and create more opportunities. This is something we're always trying to do and to collaborate around. So in this sense, I'm quite positive. But of course, we still need to see how the situation ends and how things develop in our region before we can look on these future projects and start building them together.
So on a geopolitical level, you see Israel playing a part in Germany, now assessing its role, or reassessing really its role in the world from a perspective of autonomy, if we look at energy policy or the security and military domain. And do you see the relationship then becoming stronger, and Israel really playing a bigger part in helping Germany kind of now achieve what is necessary to play the role that it has to kind of match the equivalency of economic output with geopolitical influence?
In an ideal world, I would say yes. But I think also the geopolitics of today are teaching us that you cannot take anything for sure, and one politician can decide one thing today, but in a few weeks, months or years, another politician can decide otherwise, and then you can really never know what will be in the future and how projects that you look on today as promising and building more bridges and connecting between countries will end up and will they ever be actually accomplished or not. But I think economy is always playing a very strong part in the decision makers assessment. And also, even if we look at on the war today, we know that the economic impact now is becoming probably the main concern, more than the need of silencing the regime and neutralizing them so they cannot do anything to, eliminate the country of Israel. Yeah. So I think economics will always be something that will guide the decision makers in the future, and this does give me optimism that we will see the relationship continue to flourish and more opportunities coming between countries in years to come.
All right. So the two nations that have been quite stable politically throughout the last decades, using or utilizing this key relationship of learning from each other's innovation, managing each other's strengths to combine kind of a better future ahead. Given the situation that we see now and the ongoing, quite unpredictable war in Iran, what do you see the role of Germany being then in supporting Israel on the economic front and being there as a partner as it obviously steps back militarily, but can be there to support the really only Middle Eastern democracy against its enemies?
I think the reasons why this war started were clear, and as you mentioned, it's really hard to anticipate how it will end. I think the economic purposes have been playing, and of course now are even more playing a role in the decision making of which targets to attack and how to make sure that the global economy is not affected that much from this war. And here I think more European countries will have an interest to do what it needs to be done to make sure that the economy continues, if it's by protecting the Hormuz and allowing ships to go through, or by imposing more sanctions or doing what needs to be done in order to end this war and suffer a smaller burden from on a global scale, from what's happening now in Iran. But I think, generally speaking, Germany has been very supportive, and we've heard what the chancellor had to say only 2 weeks ago in Baden-Württemberg. And I don't think there's any much more that Israel needs economically or politically now from Germany. And I'm positive that when there will be a need, Germany will stand by our side and make sure that this war is over and on the best way, both for Israel, but also for the global economy.
Thank you so much for taking the time today. We really appreciate you taking our questions and sitting down with us. We really appreciate it. And thanks so much for coming by.
Thank you very much.